Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. We are live right now. It is the 25th of March in the year 2021, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, if you're dealing with that sort of thing. Tonight, Woman in Chains. Hello to everybody. I just realized Kelly didn't make it back yet. It really just hit me. I'm like, oh, she's not here. So it looks like I'm flying this one a little bit solo. Hopefully she'll be walking in the door soon. I don't know what happened. It's been one of those interesting sort of days. Managed to get lots of things accomplished. Sorry, Karma's giving me the brush by below me, our big, beautiful cat. First of all, as always, let me express my love to each and every one of you. You know, you're exactly where you need to be right now. Everything that is happening is perfect in what it's offering you. And I do see Louisa has popped up. Yeah, Kelly's going to be here soon, I would imagine. And that's the only comment I'll see. So hi, Louisa. Good to see you, or at least to see your icon. And I don't know if you can hear it or not. Maybe if I just shut up for a minute. But we have at Christmas time, I bought us as a house gift the Woodstock large Gregorian baritone chime set. And I don't know if you can hear it or not, but I picked it because it literally comes right through the walls. It's so deep. Probably not. Anyways, it's a beautiful sound in the backdrop and a good kind of place to be in this discussion we're going to have. Now, the video is entitled Woman in Chains. And, you know, believe it or not, for me, part of that is going back to a group that if you're older like me or a fan of the 80s, you'll remember, Tears for Fears. So, of course, on Tears for Fears album, Sowing the Seeds of Love, of which they did a cover song of that, which was fantastic. There's another beautiful song on there called Woman in Chains. And that is another just fantastic song that was expressing something that to this day is still not remedied. And what we're really talking about here ultimately is this background unsettled past that the collective feminine part of our egoic whole, and if you've heard me talk before, you know that the idea that your ego is individualized is about in line with you thinking that you are individualized. It isn't. It's one ego of which all of humanity is participating in the expressions of it. And in that holographic, relativistic universe of duality that we live in, your egoic self has that feminine and masculine nature, for lack of a better term. And we have made this false distinction in some way by placing feminine energy entirely with women and masculine energy entirely with men. And that is because we've connected male and female, feminine and masculine, with the energy of ego. you could just as easily divide it in terms of brain hemispheres. The logical thinking part of the brain that speaks in words and is very much connected to order, and then the creative, chaotic, communicative side of the brain that does not use language but uses image and form. These are all part of the same dualistic structure. And I don't want to get too carried away with, and understand the reason why I keep hesitating here is because what I'm trying to explain is simply a little bit beyond words that are going to be really understandable, and I'm struggling to try to fit the right words in to give you the best opportunity of absorbing this, okay? And I think I just heard Kelly come in the door, so she should be with us soon. So, as I said, whether you're delineating it in terms of left and right hemispheres of the brain, or feminine and masculine, what we're really talking about are those two halves. The masculine being more energetic in nature, if you will, more piercing in nature, more active, whereas the feminine principle, and again, these are only labels, the feminine and the masculine, to equate it where we can, more receptive, more open and enveloping and nurturing in nature. Funny phrase, actually, nurturing in nature. So just make sure your volume's off there when you get your computer on. And the chimes are still going in the background. I just love it. So allow me to return to my focus here, and I do apologize. It's been a day, you know. I ripped the set of stairs off the deck because they were old and not built properly. That does strange things to me, being outside for too long. And surrounded by little birds today as well. But back to this. This is very important. So what really happened is that, you know, we used to live, if you go back thousands and thousands of years ago, prior to the Sumerians, what you find are what we would call First Nation cultures or early peoples cultures that were matriarchal in nature. Now, when we say matriarchal in nature, what we really mean is a number of things. One, they were ruled by women, and not often as a woman as a queen, but a woman as a medicine woman, a woman who had the wisdom of nature embodied in her in some way, and had proven that out through her deeds. And even though there may be a male chieftain, he was more like the prime minister in the UK, you know, looking after the details of the society, where the true titular head of the society was the queen. In this case, it would be that connected, nature-embodied medicine woman. And a lot of times these matriarchal cultures still did go to war with each other, but it was nothing like what happened when men began taking over. So we go back in the timeline and we take a look at this. So in those cultures, men had very defined, very obvious roles in the serving of the society or the culture they were in, but those roles were not considered the paramount roles. Those roles were considered more in the line of a grocery clerk. And listen, I've been one, and I understand how Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that of all the stratum of society, those who deal with the workings of society, those who keep things going, like the grocery workers, like the gas station attendants, the people who work in the hotels and look after the streets, those are the most valuable assets in the society. So I don't want anyone to think I'm belittling in any way. But the roles that males had in the society were not seen as really anything special. I mean, they were valued because they were indeed responsible for the continued working, the underpinnings of the culture or society to flourish and keep functional. But it was the women who were the keepers of the true wisdom. They were the ones that they were deferred to in all things. Because of that recognition of that feminine energy, every one of those males was born out of that feminine energy in that union between the feminine and masculine. And they were well aware of it. The respect for one mother and all mothers and the mother was all wrapped up in their cultures. So at a certain time in our history, men began to rebel against this. And really, they had it really good compared to what's been happening, ever after since that point. But at some time, men began to rebel against this, and we began to see the birth of masculine deities in positions of power. And this grew as first a protector alongside of the feminine deity, and therefore the natural holographic extension into the physical realm, where the leader of a society, a matriarchal society, had now a male protector instead of female protectors. And over time, that male protector became equal to the feminine and then supplanted the feminine fully. And we began to see the rise of the thousands upon thousands years dominant male kings. And when I say thousands upon thousands of years dominant, I am talking, if you look in generalities at the total number of monarchies over the last 6,000 to 10,000 years, they are predominantly male. There are a couple times when there is a female sitting with the crown as a queen, but overwhelmingly, almost, to the tune of about 97.5%, 98% masculine. In this, women became the target of what a very limited number of men saw as a form of retribution for the position that men had been in. And there are dim echoes of that still to this day in these ridiculously scary and ever so quickly growing groups of disenfranchised men who blame women for their predicament. This today is just a dim echo of that same sort of angst that began to be played out against the feminine. And if you look historically, you see that women's rights are not a slow and steady rise up, but are indeed a wave of first falling down into the depths and then coming partially up through the first women's movement in North America, which lasted until about the 20s, and then the research, 1850 or so to about 1920, and generally considered a failure. And then a second attempt to rise in the 80s and peter out in the second women movements, and now again trying to be reborn again. These are a natural system response that is being played down into the individual radio receivers of women all over the globe. But most women are blissfully unaware of this subconscious sea of collective angst from the mistreatment of women that has spanned millennia now. You cannot be separate from it as a woman today. Genetically, the history of every single woman in existence is within you as well, as a fully holographic representation of the species. Your genetic material contains all that information. That collective angst that exists is sitting in what we would call the egoic cloud, the egoic cloud of humanity, the one ego, as all humanity is one, that we all tune into and receive and transmit, just like little mobile radio stations scurrying around the planet. Whatever your vibrational state is, wherever you're thinking yourself into being, that's where you'll tap in egoically, and then you'll personalize that content on the way in. This is the same thing that happens to women everywhere. That underlying angst, if we will call it, is a dark cloud, let's say, okay, so you can picture this in your head within that egoic form, and it is riding piggyback with your transmissions every day. So in fits and starts, women are trying to wake up to their own power again. And it is necessary to point out a few things. One is that the more our societies, our modern world societies, begin to break down, the more women are put at risk. That vestigial memory within the masculine carried around by the male psyche, the subconsciousness, deep within the subconsciousness, there is still that angst that women are somehow responsible. So as our society begins to flail around, whether it's in this pandemic, in the huge increases in costs that are happening, in the disenfranchisement of the average person in comparison to the rich and wealthy across the globe, women are going to be increasingly at risk. Another part of this movement that unfortunately plays right into the male egoic structure that our society is founded upon is this idea regarding expressing womanhood as a function of your body. And I want to point out to you that yes, in an enlightened society, which we are far from there, let me tell you, people choosing to run around naked would not be an issue. But right now, in our masculine-driven, patriarchal societies, the way you dress is going to have a reaction with the vast majority of men exactly in alignment with that age-old battle. In other words, if you choose to go out in a sheer top with no bra and you're an intelligent woman, no one's going to be paying attention to your intelligence. And when I say no one, I mean the average male won't be. And even though it's ridiculous, okay, to someone like myself to even consider such a thing, they are at fault and not at fault. In other words, they're responsible for their behavior. But this behavior is programmed, as is a woman's desire to express her femininity through clothing. That is also programmed. And that may rankle some women. And I'm sorry that you think it does. But if you think anything in your existence here has anything to do with fashion in any sort of way, or the clothing that you're wearing, you're way off base. In our ridiculous societies, in our egoic forms that we've created, clothing is a totally different issue. Now, I am noticing a little bit of frame droppage, so I hope things are going to do okay. We have quite the windstorm going on, so hopefully we won't fade away. What was the question?
Is the male psyche the ego of the world?
No, the male psyche is one half of the ego of humanity, not the world. The ego of humanity. The male energy is one half of that, and the feminine energy is one half of that. Just as I said earlier, you could look at it in terms of the right and left side of the brain. The logical, action-taking, speaking side versus the receptive, creative, image-producing side of yourself. Those are both two halves in this dualistic space which are needed to make one of anything. And in this case, it's the egoic form of humanity in which all of us are tapping into. You know, this connection is made quite secure by the time you're about 14, 15 years old, and everything that you create in your mind will determine what sort of stream you're receiving. And then you will take ownership of those thought forms, personalize them, and live out your life according to those perceptions. So why are we talking about this? Well, we're living in a time where the feminine is rising. Nature, as I told Kelly years ago, is auto-correcting as she always does. The difference is the time frame is much larger. It's not the way we would like it. You know, things happen quickly. Nature's quite relaxed about it. There's no hurry. It'll happen when it happens, but it is happening. We have a huge decrease in the amount of viable sperm that males are producing on the planet. Young male children are coming into the world with far more issues, exhibiting many more dysfunctional forms of disease and mutations that are beginning to happen. And yeah, we could point to all sorts of things from plastics and BPA in bottles and vaccines and the whole nine yards. Really, that's just window dressing. What we're talking about is a rebalancing again. Everything is in flux. And that's why at the same time that we have people waking up on the planet and we have women waking up on this planet, there is a tornado in response to it. Because there always has to be harmony. There always has to be a balancing of those energies. So what can women do? Well, I understand gathering together. It's very empowering. And that doesn't happen often enough. But what it really comes down to is defining for yourself through paying attention to your own being what the feminine within you really means to you, and what it really means to be a woman here in this world right now? What is the role of this individuated form of woman that you are? Be wary of falling into restarting that same old process again by carrying on the angst or the anger. You know, I watched after that young woman was killed in the UK a couple of weeks ago. There was a peaceful protest, which, of course, police, and it made no sense because it was a policeman who was arrested for her murder, you know, came in and dispersed the crowd and broke things up and arrested some women. And the response from the women was, by and large, to respond in anger. And there's a lot of anger there. There's thousands of years of collective angst that women are dealing with. And whether you know it or not, it lies under your conscious thoughts and is influencing them even today. You have to be very aware that as the feminine is starting to rise, it falls upon you, if you're a woman alive right now today, to redefine for yourself outside of society's definition what it means to be that feminine influence on this planet. It doesn't come from the clothing you wear. It doesn't come from a place of anger. Leave that for the masculine, which is going to struggle and fight back on many levels. It takes a collective to stand for the true nature of the feminine, which is receptive and responsive and opening and accepting without being walked upon. And I know some of our group members have faced this and have made decisions for themselves. I know that it can be very frightening, and that the fear of what you're going to be without that supposed safety net of some sort, whatever that was, can keep you from actualizing what and who you truly are. And it isn't about doing anything spectacular, because you already are spectacular. You are the source of life. And I'm calling upon all of you to act like it. The masculine energy, in terms of humanity's ego, is descending as the feminine is rising. This is necessary for the healing of our planet and our species. It is a solemn, reverent role that women have right now. And the first part of that is being willing to break out of the chains that hold you. The chains that involve ideas like you're not enough, or that you need somebody who is not treating you in the way that you know you deserve to be treated. And I'm not talking about buying you things. I'm not talking about any of that or providing for you. I don't believe in that sort of thing. I'm talking about reverence for the feminine. Reverence for what you represent in the world. More than ever, our male patriarchal structures need the feminine. And it is not to hold those male structures up, but to let them crumble away and replace them with more open, receptive, nurturing structures. And it begins with each of you. For thousands of years, the male influence has held dominance on the planet, and that dominance is dying. The feminine is rising. There is a balance point to be reached. And I want to make you all aware that the best way to heal that underlying collective angst that's built up of centuries of suffering and centuries of pain being placed upon woman, the best way to heal that is to simply let it go and allow the feminine to express itself through you in that one-of-a-kind way that only you can provide. Much love this evening. That's it. That's all. Namaste. Have a beautiful Thursday night, and we'll speak again very soon.